Hi, it's Future from Sewmate. Welcome to my channel. If you want to see how I make this dress, please stay tuned. Please subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell so that each time I upload new videos you get notified. You will need a basic bodice block to do this. I've got a tutorial on this channel on how you can make one. I'll leave a link in the description below. Now trace around your block as usual, marking the dot. Lift your pattern, draw in your dot, square in your waistline, lengthen your dress to your desired length. I'm using 35 centimeters from the hip line. Square a line across and square another line down from the hip line there. Now I'm adding my hem allowance. I'm using 4 centimeters. Just smoothing the curve there. At the center front neckline, lower the neckline by 3 centimeters and square a line. Widen your neckline by 3 centimeters as well and square another line. So 3 centimeters on both ends. With your curved ruler, draw a nice curve for the neckline there. Now adding the seam allowance for the neckline, I'm using 1 centimeter. You can choose to use whatever amount you want. Measure your shoulder and mark halfway. Join this point to the dart tip with a straight line to form our panel line. Now we won't be using the dart in this pattern. We've got panel lines, so we'll cut through these points and I'm just putting balancing notches there. At the waistline, we're going to add a waist shaping of 1.5 centimeters below the waistline. Just draw a straight line to the second leg of the dart like I've done and square your dart points down. And draw a straight line connecting them to the side seam. Now that's our waist shaping. We won't be using it in this pattern. Adding my owl punch for the dart, so 1 centimeter up from the dart tip and put a circle. Now adding grain lines to all pattern pieces. Adding notches to the rest of the pattern and labeling the patterns. Center front panel, cut 1 on fold and I put my initial. Side front panel, cut 1 pair and I put my initial. And the front skirt, cut 1 on fold and I put my initial. Now cut around the pattern like I'm doing here. Now reshape this part with a curved ruler because we don't need a point. Now I'm adding joining seam allowances to both the bodice and the skirt. 1 centimeter seam allowance at the waistline there and transferring the notches across. Cut around the pattern. Now adding seam allowances to the center front panel there. I'm adding a seam allowance to the panel line and to the waistline. 1 centimeter seam allowances. Also adding a seam allowance to the side front panel, to both the panel line and the waistline as well. Transferring notches across to the edge and cutting around the pattern pieces. I'll be putting the center front panel on fold and the front skirt on fold as well. Now front patterns are finished, moving on to making the back patterns. Trace around your block as usual, making sure to mark the dots. Lift your pattern, draw in your dots. Square in your waistline and lengthen your dress to your desired length. I use 35 centimeters for the front, I'm using the same for the back. And square a line across, square another line down from the hip line there, like I'm doing here. Now I'm adding the hem allowance, which is 4 centimeters. From the waistline, we're going to put in our waist shaping. So for the center back, we're gonna go in 1.5 centimeters, put a mark, and draw in our dart for the waist shaping there. At the bottom, make sure you square it down to the end of the dart like I did. So we moved in at the center back by 1.5 centimeters, divide that amount by 2 and move in your dart points by 0.75 on both sides like I'm doing here. Now redraw your darts using these new points that we drawn. And I'm cancelling the outer parts so that we know we're not going to use the outer part when we're using the dart now. We're going to add more waist shaping for the back here. So from the waistline again, we're gonna go up by 2 centimeters and draw a straight line to the second dart leg. From the waistline down, we're gonna go 1.5 centimeters and draw another straight line to the second dart leg again. So 2 centimeters above and 1.5 centimeters below. Now square down your dart points like I'm doing here for the new reduced dart. And join these 2 points with a straight line to the side seam like I'm doing here. And our waist shaping is done. Now we won't be using that whole part. That's our waist shaping for the back. Now lower the center back neckline by 1.5 centimeters and square a line across. Widen the neckline by 3 centimeters like we did with the front again and square a line down. Draw in a nice curve for your neckline with a curved ruler. Now I'm adding seam allowances to the neckline, 1 centimeter. Measure your shoulder and divide it into 2. Mark halfway. Connect this new point to the dart tip with a straight line. Now adding in my balancing notches for the back, that's double notches, and the rest of the notches for the pattern. Now we're going to add our zipper notch for the back dress. So measure 18 centimeters down from our new lowered waistline and put a notch and go 1 centimeter down and put another notch. That shows the end of our zipper, so we won't be using that waist shaping there. Now adding the arm punch for the back skirt, 1 centimeter up from the dart tip and put a circle. Now I'm adding all my grain lines for the patterns. and labeling the pattern, center back panel, cut one pair and I put my initial. Side back panel, cut one pair and I put my initial. And back skirt, cut one pair and I put my initial. Now cut around the pattern, making sure to take out all the waist shaping. So cut through this new point and this one and this line too. Cut around your patterns. Now adding joining seam allowances to the skirt and the bodice patterns. 1 centimeter seam allowances. Transferring the notches across to the edge of the pattern. Make sure you square them up. Cut around your pattern piece. Now adding joining seam allowances to the side back panel as well, to both the panel line and the waistline. 1 centimeter seam allowances. Now smoothen that little point there with a curved ruler. And transfer your notches across to the edge like I'm doing here. Now cut around your pattern. Now adding joining seam allowances to the center back panel as well, to both the panel line and the waistline. 1 centimeter seam allowances. And transferring the notches across to the edge of the pattern and cut around the pattern. And our back patterns are finished. Now we're moving on to making the facings for our patterns. Get the center front panel and just trace around the neckline curve and the shoulder like I'm doing here. Square a line using the straight edge there and draw a line down here for the shoulder. Square a line using the shoulder line for the neckline edge and just finish off that curve with a curved ruler. We're going to have a 6 centimeters wide facing with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, so 7 centimeters down from the center front edge. We're gonna go around drawing in 7 centimeters like I'm doing here, making sure to square the shoulder and the center front. Complete the curve nicely with the curved ruler. We're going to put the center front on fold and drawing in my grain line. Labeling the pattern front facing. Cut 1 on fold, plus 1 fusing on fold as well. And I put my initial. Now marking 3 millimeters around the neckline edge, we're going to trim this off so that the facing will sit well inside the dress. Cut around the pattern. Moving on to drafting the back facing, trace around the center back edge, neckline edge and the shoulder like I'm doing here. Draw a straight line for the center back, square a line using this line and draw a line for the shoulder. Square a line using the shoulder line for the neckline edge and complete this curve with a curved ruler. For 10 centimeters down and square a line at the center back. We have a deep facing at the back for the hanger up heel and square line 7 centimeters from the shoulder there to match with the front, and complete the curve with a curved ruler. Now putting in my grain line parallel to the center back and labeling back facing, cut 1 pair plus 1 pair fusing, and I put my initial. We're going to trim off 3 millimeters as well to help the facing roll back nicely into the dress. And cut around your pattern. The facing pieces are finished. Now for the sleeve, we're going to use this bishop sleeve pattern we made in the previous tutorial. I'll put a link in the description below. Now we're gonna do a closed cuff, so measure around your hand like I'm doing here and add about 1.5 centimeters each to that amount. Now draw a straight line that's equal to that amount that you get, which is your hand measurement plus 1.5 centimeters each. Decide on the width of your cuff. We're using 5 centimeters, multiply that by 2 and you get 10 centimeters. So square a line both ends, which is 10 centimeters like I'm doing here, and just close it off, adding a seam allowance to join on the sleeve 1 centimeter. At the sides, you have to put a seam allowance that's equivalent to what's on your block for the side seam of your sleeve. So I'm putting 1.5 centimeters to both sides. Just completing all the lines there. And adding my grain line to the middle of the pattern piece. Now labeling the pattern, sleeve cuff, cut 2 plus 2 fusing, and cut around the pattern, adding notches. And our patterns are finished. We're moving on to sewing. We're going to start sewing our dress now. So what you need are your completed patterns, your fabrics, a zipper, and your cutting tools. So for the sleeves, I'll be using this organza fabric, and this is for the main dress. Let's start cutting our fabrics now. All our pattern pieces are cut and ready to sew. So the first step is for us to interface the cuffs for the sleeves and also the facings for our dress. Let's do that now. Okay, so I applied interfacing to all the pattern pieces that needed interfacing. Now take your skirt pieces and go on and sew all the darts for back and front. I'll do that now. Okay, so all the darts are sewn and well pressed, and we're gonna put this on the side for now. Now get your center back panels and side back panel pieces. Now take your center back panels and side back panels, align them at the shoulders here and just pin along the panel line, okay, matching the notches. Put this on the side. Now get your center front panel and 2 side front panels. Next, get your center front panel and your side front panels, align them at the shoulders and pin along the panel lines here like we did with the back. Now take this to your sewing machine and sew along the panel lines for both the back and front pieces and overlock all of them. Let's do that. Okay, so I finished with sewing all the panel lines and overlocking them, and I also gave them all a nice press. Panel lines sewn and overlocked. Same with this one. Now get your front skirt and front bodice, lay them right sides together and pin them along the waistline, making sure that you're matching the panel lines with the dart here. Okay, let's do that. Now put this on the side. Now get your back skirt pieces and back bodice pieces, lay them one on top of the other right sides together and just match them along the waistline, making sure to match the dart with the panel line. Okay, let's do that. Now take this to the sewing machine and sew along the waistlines and overlock them. Let's do that. Okay, so I finished attaching the bodices and the skirts together, and I gave it a nice press, and I also overlocked everything nicely. Okay. Next, we're going to install our invisible zipper to the back pieces. So get your 2 back pieces, lay them one on top of the other like this, right sides together, and pin along the center back seam here. Now go to your sewing machine and sew from the top here, the center back seam, to the zipper notch with the longest stitch on your sewing machine. Okay, do not back tack or anything. Then when you get to the zipper notch, back tack and continue sewing the rest of the seam to the bottom here with the normal sewing stitch. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so I've sewn the center back seam like I told you, and I also went ahead and overlocked the center back seam. Okay, so now take your invisible zipper. We're going to lay it down on the seam line here with the right side facing down. Make sure to leave an extension of about 2.5 to 5 centimeters below the zipper notch. Okay, and just pin along the seam line here just on the seam allowance. Okay, making sure to put your zipper tape exactly right here in the middle. Now I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine and sew a first row of stitching just to attach the zipper to the seam allowance. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so I attached the zipper tape to the seam allowance here, and then I went ahead and removed all the stitches that we did from the top to the zipper notch. Okay, you remember the longest stitch we did, just take it out after this step. Now open your zipper and straighten the seam out like this. So what we're going to do is to use our invisible zipper foot or the zipper foot to just do our final row of stitching. You just have to open your zipper foot like this whilst you're sewing and sew as close as you can to the zipper tip here. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so I finished installing my invisible zipper. It's nice and neat now, working well and fantastic. Okay, so close the zipper back up. I'm just going to shorten this zipper now. With your back piece facing up, we're gonna take your front piece and lay it on top like this. Now we're going to match the shoulder seams. Make sure to match your panel lines here, okay? And pin along the shoulders. Now take this to your sewing machine and sew along the shoulder seams here with your 1.5 centimeter seam allowance, and make sure to overlock the seam open. You can actually overlock first and then do your stitching afterwards. It's up to you. Take this to your sewing machine and sew along the seams here with your 1.5 centimeter seam allowance, and make sure to iron the seams open. After that, take this to your overlocker and overlock your center back seams and all around the bottom edge here. Let's do that. Okay, that's done. So now lay your dress with the right side facing up like this and open your zipper. Take your facing and lay it down with the right side facing down as well. Match your shoulder seams. Now extend your zipper tape like this and just get your facing center back part and just lay it on top like this, matching the seams. Now we're just going to pin along. Now take this to the sewing machine and sew along the center back seam, along the whole neckline and back to the center back seam. Okay, let's do that. Okay, that's done. So now we're going to clip the corners to reduce bulk and just clip all along the neckline. When we finish with that, we're just going to understitch right around the neckline. So what you do, make sure your seam allowance is lying flat on one side. Take your facing and roll it on top of the seam allowance like this. So now you have to go as far as you can and just understitch right around the whole neckline. Let's do that. Okay, that's done and I finished with the understitching. I don't know whether you can see. What we're gonna do now is to turn our corner out nicely like this. And we're gonna go to our iron and just iron our neckline flat. Let's do that. Okay, so now our neckline is finished. Now just go to your shoulder seam and stitch along the ditch here a few stitches to just attach the facing here to the dress, okay, so that it doesn't move around when you are wearing it. We'll put this on the side and start working on the sleeves. Just go and sew 2 rows of gathering stitches along the edge of the sleeves here for both sleeves. Let's do that. Okay, now we're going to gather the bottom part of our sleeves, okay. Take your sleeve cuff pieces. What we're going to do is to go and iron it under by 1 centimeter. Do the same here. Iron your seam allowance under as well, 1 centimeter, and then put them together and iron it halfway. Let's do that for both sleeves. Okay, so I've done that, and now we're just gonna open our cuffs and put them on the side. After gathering the sleeves, what we're going to do is to distribute the gathering evenly so that it matches with the top end of our sleeve cuff here. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so I finished gathering my sleeves to match the bottom part of the sleeve like this for both sleeves. Okay, so I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine and sew along this seam line here with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. I'm gonna do that now. Okay, so I finished with sewing the seam for the sleeve here, and I went ahead and ironed the seam allowances facing down, okay, because we want them to be covered by this cuff at the end of all this. Lay your dress with the right side facing up, and then take your sleeve and make sure to match the notches here and just pin along. Now take this to your sewing machine and sew along both the sleeves with a 1 centimeter seam allowance and overlock them, okay? Okay, now, so the sleeves are sewn on and I overlocked them as well, nicely right round, and I also went ahead and ironed the seam facing up, okay? Now we're going to finish off our side seams. So turn your dress to the wrong side, like right sides facing for back and front. Now we're going to pin along the whole side seam, starting from the top of the sleeve here all the way down to the hem of the dress, making sure to match the notches, match the underarm seam and the waistline seam. Okay, let's do that for both sides. Now take your dress to the sewing machine and sew along the side seams from the sleeve top here all the way down to the hemline and overlock both seams. When we finish with that, we're going to hem our dress, so just overlock right round and then do a blind hem. Okay, let's do all that. Okay, so I finished all the side seams and I overlocked them too. They're nice and neat. I overlocked this one too. And now we have to finish off our sleeves, so to do that, fold along this seam line here, and then you're going to fold again along this line, fold everything inside, and what you're going to do is to try and catch the top of this seam whilst covering everything up there like this. Try and catch this bottom part from the top here with a stitch in the ditch. Okay, do that for both sleeves, and when we finish that, we're going to hem our dress. So just overlock right round and iron the hem under. I've done that for mine already. After that, do a blind hem stitch right round. I'm gonna do all that now. Okay, so my dress is finished. I went ahead and finished the hemming there. I did a blind stitch hem, so it's nice and neat. And also for the cuffs, I finished sewing them on and it looks nice and neat both inside and out. And I'm so happy with the result. Thank you.